cafeteria froze. A sickening thud, Sarah Mitchell hit the floor, her tray exploding in mashed potatoes and shame. Colonel Marcus Webb's polished boot pinned her sandwich like a bug. "On your knees already?" he sneered, towering over her. Phone slid out silently, recording every second. She didn't flinch, didn't speak. Her hands moved, slow, deliberate, gathering utensils like nothing happened. Laughter erupted behind her. "This," Webb announced, arms wide, "is what happens when princesses play soldier." A pause. Then, a voice from the back. "You really don't remember her, do you?" Webb turned, his smirk faltering. From the shadows, a scarred figure stepped forward, dog tag in hand. Not a cadet, not a soldier, something else entirely. The dog tags hanging from Sarah's neck catch the light as she bends lower, the worn metal glinting with 3 distinct numbers etched deep into the surface. 847. A passing general pauses at the cafeteria entrance, his eyes narrowing as he glimpses those numbers. His face transforms in an instant, recognition flashing across his features, followed by something that looks remarkably like shock, but Sarah doesn't notice. She simply continues cleaning, her movements precise and practiced as if she's done this 1,000 times before. The general's hand tightens on the door frame before he turns and walks away, pulling out his phone with sudden urgency. "What would you do if someone called you weak? Tell us in the comments below." Sarah Mitchell lives in a modest 1-bedroom apartment 3 miles from Fort Braxton, the kind of place where the walls are thin enough to hear neighbors arguing and the hot water runs out after 10 minutes. Her 1998 Honda Civic sits in the parking lot, rust creeping along the wheel wells, the odometer showing 237,000 miles. Every morning at exactly 8:47, her alarm sounds. Though she's always awake before it rings, the routine never varies. Black coffee, wheat toast with peanut butter. A 5-minute shower where she never removes her dog tags, not even when the metal grows cold against her skin. At the base medical facility, she moves through her duties like a ghost. Other medics barely register her presence. She's just that, quiet blonde girl, who takes the night shifts no one else wants, who handles the difficult patients others avoid. Her colleagues don't notice how she touches her dog tags throughout the day, an unconscious habit repeated exactly 847 times between sunrise and sunset. They don't see how she deliberately chose apartment 847 on Pine Street, or how she keeps exactly $8.47 in loose change in her car's console. These numbers aren't coincidence, they're a ritual, a remembrance, a weight she carries in worn metal against her chest. The apartment tells its own story in what's missing rather than what's there. No mirrors face the bed. She can't stand seeing her reflection first thing in the morning. An emergency bag sits packed by the door, ready for evacuation at a moment's notice. Long sleeves hide the network of scars mapping her hands and forearms. Old wounds that healed badly in places without proper medical care. Her bookshelf holds medical textbooks with sand still trapped in their spines, pages marked with notes written in places like Kandahar, Fallujah, remote forward operating bases whose names never made the news. Sarah speaks softly when she speaks at all, but patients trust her implicitly. There's something in her blue eyes that seems older than her 28 years, a depth of understanding that makes wounded soldiers relax under her care. At the animal shelter, where she volunteers on weekends, dogs with histories of abuse gravitate to her corner of the kennel. She sits with them for hours, her scarred hands gentle as she coaxes them to eat, to trust, to believe that not all humans bring pain. The other volunteers marvel at her patience, not knowing that she sees herself in every frightened creature that flinches from sudden movements. Her medical skills border on supernatural, a photographic memory for procedures, an ability to diagnose conditions other medics miss, hands that remain steady even when artillery shells explode nearby. No, that's not right. There are no shells here. This is Fort Braxton, not Helmand Province. Sometimes the memories blur together, past and present colliding in moments of exhaustion. She drinks her coffee black because cream and sugar were luxuries in the field. She eats simple meals because MREs trained her palate for basic sustenance. She sleeps 4 to 5 hours maximum because in combat zones, those who slept too deeply didn't wake up at all. Late one Tuesday night, her phone rings. The number shows as unknown, but she answers anyway. A voice speaks a single word. 847. Sarah listens to the silence that follows, her breathing steady, controlled. After 30 seconds, she hangs up without saying anything. Her fingers find the dog tags, tracing those three numbers etched into metal. 8, 4, 7. Each digit worn smooth by countless touches, each number carrying the weight of something far heavier than its mathematical value. Colonel Webb's campaign against Sarah begins the very next morning. He assigns her to latrine duty during peak medical hours, claiming it builds character. The other medics exchange uncomfortable glances but say nothing. Webb has connections, influence, a reputation for destroying careers over perceived slights. Sarah reports to the restrooms without complaint, her medical expertise wasted on porcelain and industrial cleanser while patients wait longer for inferior care. The second week brings public humiliation during morning formation. Webb singles her out in front of visiting Pentagon officials, criticizing her weak constitution and questioning whether someone so soft-spoken and delicate belongs in uniform. His voice carries across the parade ground as 300 soldiers stand at attention, forced to witness her degradation. By the third week, he removes her from critical patient care entirely, relegating her to filing paperwork in a windowless basement office. The forms blur together, requisitions, supply requests, bureaucratic minutiae that any clerk could handle. Her hands that once performed emergency surgery in combat zones now push papers, while soldiers suffer upstairs. Week 4 sees Webb spreading poisonous rumors through the command structure. He whispers about emotional instability, suggests she might be a liability, questions her mental fitness for duty. The lies spread like infection through the base hierarchy, each retelling adding new details, new doubts about the quiet medic who never defends herself. The new base commander arrives on a rain-soaked Thursday morning. General Patricia Hayes carries herself with the bearing of someone who's seen real combat, whose ribbons tell stories of decisions made under fire. She reviews personnel files late into the night, her office light the last one burning in headquarters. Sarah's file draws her attention. Too many redactions, too many blank spaces where service history should be. When Webb intercepts her inquiry, dismissing Sarah as an administrative error and suggesting her file contains clerical mistakes from rushed wartime documentation, Hayes's instincts sharpen. She's spent 30 years reading between lines, recognizing when someone's trying to bury the truth. Hayes watches Sarah during an emergency drill, noting how her hands move with practiced efficiency, how she anticipates complications before they arise, how she remains calm while others panic. That night, the general accesses classified databases from her secure terminal, entering authorization codes that few possess. Sarah's true service record requires clearance levels that make Hayes sit back in her chair. The screen glows with restricted information. Operation Silent Angel, deployment dates that overlap with some of the war's bloodiest battles, a unit designation that makes the general's breath catch. 847, Medical Response Team. The computer holds more secrets, but Hayes has seen enough to understand that Sarah Mitchell is no ordinary medic. Webb's attacks intensify with vicious creativity. During a packed staff meeting, he questions Sarah's competence in front of 20 senior officers, holding up her personnel file like evidence in a trial. "This is what happens when we lower standards," he declares, his voice dripping with disdain. "Soldiers like Mitchell here are too soft for real military service. I recommend immediate transfer to desk duty, permanent desk duty, where she can't endanger anyone with her weakness." The room bristles with discomfort, but no one speaks up. Webb has spent years cultivating fear, and it pays dividends in silence. He demands her psychological evaluation, suggests discharge for emotional unfitness, his words carefully chosen to plant seeds of doubt that will grow into career-ending assumptions. Sarah sits through it all without expression, but her colleagues notice the unconscious tell. Her fingers find the dog tags more frequently now, tracing those numbers like a rosary. During moments of peak stress, when Webb's voice rises to crescendo, she whispers something under her breath. Those sitting closest catch fragments. 847. 847. Repeated like a mantra, like a prayer, like an anchor to something beyond this petty humiliation. The numbers seem to center her, to provide some internal strength that Webb's cruelty cannot penetrate. The breaking point comes during another confrontation in the medical bay. Webb grabs Sarah's arm as she tries to pass, his grip tight enough to bruise. "I'm talking to you, princess," he snarls, but the words die in his throat. Sarah's body moves without conscious thought, a lightning-fast defensive position, weight shifted, free hand positioned to strike. The transformation lasts less than a second before she forcibly relaxes. stepping back with mumbled apology. Webb doesn't even realize what happened, too caught up in his own performance to notice how close he came to something dangerous. But General Hayes watches from the doorway, having arrived to investigate a supply discrepancy. She sees Sarah's fingers immediately return to those dog tags, tracing 847 like a ward against violence, like chains holding something back. The truth emerges in a private office where dust motes dance through afternoon sunlight. General Hayes closes the door, engages the security locks, and turns to face Sarah with eyes that have seen too much war to be fooled by false modesty. "I know about the 847, she says simply, and watches Sarah's careful composure crack like ice under spring sun. The general continues, her voice gentle but insistent. "Operation Silent Angel. The 847 Medical Response Team. 72 hours behind enemy lines, 847 coalition and civilian lives saved under impossible conditions." Each word lands like a physical blow, and Sarah's hands clutch the dog tags hard enough to leave impressions in her palms. "You want to know about 847? Sarah's voice emerges raw, unused to carrying this weight aloud. "It's not just a number. It's First Lieutenant Jackson, who would have bled out from shrapnel wounds if we hadn't gotten there in time. It's the Afghan translator's daughter who survived because we had antibiotics. It's Private Coleman who lost his legs but kept his life. 847 faces, 847 names, 847 families who got their loved ones back." Her voice drops to barely above a whisper. "And it's the 6 members of my team who didn't make it out, who died making sure those 847 lived. The numbers on my tags aren't serial numbers, General. They're a memorial. They're a promise. They're all I have left." The ambush that ended Operation Silent Angel plays out in her words like a fever dream. Enemy forces closing in, ammunition running low, evacuation helicopters still hours away. Her team made the choice that medics sometimes face: stay with the wounded or save themselves. They formed a protective circle around the aid station, 6 medics with rifles they rarely used, holding the line while Sarah performed surgery after surgery, transfusion after transfusion, keeping the wounded stable until help arrived. When the helicopters finally touched down, Sarah was the only medic still breathing, surrounded by 847 living patients and 6 dead colleagues who had given everything to maintain their oath. "That's why I stay quiet," Sarah continues, her fingers never leaving the dog tags. "Because they call me a hero, but heroes don't let their team die. Heroes don't survive when better people fall. I'm not soft, General. I'm just tired of being congratulated for living when they died. Every day I touched these tags 847 times, once for each life saved. It's not obsession, it's remembrance. It's the only way I know to honor them, to carry them forward, to make their sacrifice mean something beyond medals and ceremonies that they'll never attend." Hayes wants to argue, to explain survivors' guilt, to mandate therapy, to announce Sarah's heroism from every loudspeaker on base. But she recognizes the particular weight that some soldiers carry, not the weight of what they did, but of what they survived. Instead, she makes a different choice. "Your secret is safe," she promises. "But Webb needs to stop. I can handle that quietly if you prefer." Sarah nods, already retreating into herself, but Hayes isn't finished. "Those 847 people, Sergeant Mitchell, they're living their lives because of you and your team. That matters. Whether you accept recognition or not, that matters. Have you ever witnessed someone being underestimated? Share your story with us." Webb discovers fragments of the conversation through his network of informants, but misunderstands everything. He assumes Sarah has been making complaints, pulling strings, using connections to undermine him. His paranoia transforms into rage, and rage into a final public confrontation that will destroy one of them completely. The base inspection provides perfect cover. Pentagon officials, media representatives, hundreds of witnesses gathered in the main courtyard for the formal ceremony. Webb sees his opportunity and seizes it with both hands, unaware that he's about to detonate his own career. "Attention!" Webb's voice cuts through the morning air as he strides toward Sarah's position. She stands with the other medics, trying to remain invisible in formation, but Webb won't allow it. "I have evidence that Sergeant Mitchell has been falsifying her credentials, claiming experience she doesn't possess, hiding behind connections to avoid proper evaluation." The crowd shifts uncomfortably as Webb produces a folder, waving it like a prosecutor presenting evidence. "This soldier is a fraud, a weak link in our chain, too soft to serve alongside real warriors." His voice rises with each accusation, feeding off its own momentum. What kind of soldier hides behind mysterious patrons? What kind of medic can't even defend herself against basic scrutiny? Sarah breaks her silence, for the first time in months. Colonel Webb, please stop. Her voice carries across the courtyard, soft but clear. He interprets the plea as weakness, blood in the water that triggers his predatory instincts. Oh, now she speaks. Tell us, Sergeant Mitchell, what do those numbers on your dog tags mean? 847. Is that your participation trophy number, your safe space designation? He reaches toward her tags, intending to rip them from her neck for emphasis, but stops as a voice cuts through the air like a blade. Colonel Hayes arrives with a contingent of Pentagon officials, their timing too perfect to be coincidental. Among them walks General Morrison, whose weathered face carries scars from a different war, from a day when 847 lives hung in the balance. Webb doesn't notice the sudden shift in atmosphere, too intoxicated by his own performance to recognize the trap closing around him. Continue, Colonel, Hayes says smoothly. You were explaining Sergeant Mitchell's unfitness for service. Please, elaborate for our visiting officials. Webb obliges with enthusiasm, each word another nail in his coffin. He questions her combat experience. Morrison's jaw tightens. He mocks her quiet demeanor. Hayes produces a tablet from her briefcase. He points to her dog tags again, sneering about meaningless numbers and false valor, and that's when Morrison steps forward. The crowd parts instinctively as the three-star general approaches Sarah, his eyes fixed on those 3 numbers etched in metal. When he speaks, his voice carries the weight of absolute authority and something deeper, profound gratitude mixed with old pain. 847, Morrison says, and Sarah's entire body goes rigid. He continues, each word measured and deliberate. That's not a serial number, Colonel Webb. That's not a participation trophy. That's the number of coalition forces and civilians saved by the 847 medical response team during Operation Silent Angel. The silence that follows feels alive, electric, with sudden understanding. Morrison's eyes remain locked on Sarah's as he continues. I should know. I was number 312. Chest wound, 70% blood loss, 6 hours from the nearest surgical unit. This woman and her team kept me alive when medical textbooks said I should have died. The revelation ripples through the assembled crowd like a stone dropped in still water. Morrison reaches up with steady hands, unpinning one of his ribbons, a purple heart, and holding it up for all to see. This medal represents the day I almost died in Helmand Province. The day the 847 medical response team decided that enemy fire wasn't going to stop them from doing their duty. 72 hours of continuous operations under siege conditions, 847 lives saved. His voice grows harder with each word, aimed like artillery at Webb's crumbling position. And you stand here, in your pressed uniform that's never seen real combat, attacking one of the finest medics to ever serve this country? Webb's face cycles through colors like a malfunctioning traffic light, red to white to green as the magnitude of his mistake becomes clear. His career isn't just ending, it's detonating in real time before hundreds of witnesses. He attempts to speak, to salvage something from the wreckage, but Morrison isn't finished. The general turns to address the crowd, his voice carrying the authority of someone who's earned every star on his collar through blood and sacrifice. Let me tell you about Sergeant Mitchell's weakness, since Colonel Webb seems so concerned about it. Her weakness is that she counts every life she saves instead of celebrating them. Her weakness is refusing recognition while lesser soldiers chase glory. Her weakness is touching those dog tags 847 times each day, once for every person breathing today because of her team's sacrifice. Hayes steps forward with the tablet, its screen displaying classification stamps and redacted documents. Colonel Webb, would you like to share your combat record with the Assembly, your time under fire, the lives you've saved? The questions hang in the air like grenades with pulled pins. Webb's mouth opens and closes soundlessly, his carefully constructed facade crumbling as the crowd realizes they're watching a coward who built his career on attacking those who actually served. I have your complete service record here, Hayes continues mercilessly. 22 years of administrative positions, 0 combat deployments, 0 medical saves, 0 understanding of what real service looks like. Sarah stands perfectly still through it all, her face a mask of controlled emotion. When the crowd begins to stir, when whispers of admiration and shock ripple through the ranks, she finally speaks. General Morrison, General Hayes, I appreciate your words, but they're not necessary. Her voice remains soft, but it carries clearly across the courtyard. Colonel Webb was doing what he thought best for unit cohesion. I don't seek punishment for him, only understanding. The grace of her response draws sharp contrast to Webb's cruelty, making his behavior appear even more petty by comparison. She turns to Webb directly, meeting his eyes with that same steady gaze that's watched 847 people choose life over death. The 847 aren't just numbers, Colonel. They're people, with families, with futures, with dreams that almost ended in the dust. My team died ensuring those dreams continued. That's not weakness. That's the strength you'll never understand. Morrison's voice breaks through again, thick with emotion this time. 6 medics gave their lives that day. Rogers, Patel, Washington, Chen, Murphy, and Gonzalez. They held the perimeter while Sergeant Mitchell, then Specialist Mitchell, performed medical miracles with dwindling supplies and enemy mortars dropping around them. When the evacuation finally arrived, she refused to leave until every patient was loaded. She was the last one on the last helicopter. Covered in blood that wasn't hers, still checking vitals as they lifted off. He pauses, swallowing hard. She carries those tags not as glory but as gravestone. 847 lives saved, 6 lives lost. That's the math she lives with every single day. The crowd's energy shifts palpably from spectacle to ceremony, from mockery to memorial. Soldiers throughout the formation straighten their spines, understanding they stand in the presence of something sacred, not just a hero, but a living reminder of what service truly means. Webb seems to shrink with each passing moment, his cronies melting away like shadows at sunrise, leaving him isolated in his shame. His transfer orders will arrive within hours, a quiet administrative reassignment to a supply depot in Alaska, where his toxic leadership can't poison another command. But that's tomorrow's humiliation. Today belongs to truth. Sarah touches her dog tags one more time, 848th time for the day, and makes a request that surprises everyone. If we're done here, I have patients waiting. Real medical work doesn't stop for ceremonies. The simplicity of it, the matter-of-fact return to duty, says more about her character than any medal could capture. Hayes nods permission, and Sarah breaks from formation with the same quiet dignity she's maintained throughout her ordeal. As she walks toward the medical facility, something remarkable happens. One by one, soldiers throughout the formation salute. Not the mandatory courtesy due to rank, but the genuine respect offered to someone who's earned it in the hardest currency imaginable. Other people's lives. Which moment hit you the hardest? Let us know where you're watching from. 3 months pass quietly. Webb's gone, his replacement competent without cruelty. The base runs smoother, but Sarah remains unchanged. Same night shifts, same quiet dedication. Today she tends to Private Thompson, 19 years old with shrapnel wounds from a training accident. His hands shake as she cleans the cuts, fear written across his young face. Hurts like hell, doesn't it? Sarah says softly, her hands steady as she works. Yes, ma'am, I'm scared it'll scar, that I'll look like a soldier. She rolls up her sleeve slightly, revealing old scars crossing her forearm. Scars tell stories, Private. Some worth telling, some worth keeping quiet. The question isn't whether you'll have them, but what you'll do with the story they tell. Did you get those in combat, ma'am? Sarah's fingers unconsciously touch her dog tags before she answers. I got these trying to save people who needed saving. That's all that matters. She finishes bandaging his wounds with practiced efficiency. You're going to be fine, Thompson. The body heals. Just make sure when it does, you use that healing to help others heal too. The young soldier nods, something settling in his expression. As Sarah moves to the next patient, she doesn't see Morrison watching from the doorway. He comes by monthly now, not for treatment but to check on the woman who saved him. He's not the only one. Letters arrive regularly from the 847, some with photos of children born after wars that almost claimed their parents, some with simple thanks, repeated year after year. Sarah reads each one exactly once before filing them away, unwilling to let gratitude overshadow duty. But here's the twist that even Hayes doesn't know. Sarah has been quietly tracking down the families of her 6 fallen team members. Using her off-duty hours and her modest salary, she's been funding scholarships in their names, medical training for young people from their hometowns. Rogers, Patel, Washington, Chen, Murphy, and Gonzalez live on not just in her memory, but in the hands of new medics learning to save lives. She's already sponsored 47 students, 800 more to go, Another number to carry, but this one points forward instead of back. Her apartment at 847 Pine Street remains sparse, functional. The photo of her team sits on the nightstand, and every night ends the same way. Dog tags in hand, 847 touches, each one a name, a face, a future preserved. But now there's something else. Acceptance that survival can be its own form of service. That living when others died creates obligation to live meaningfully. The ritual continues not as penance, but as preparation for another day of quiet service. Sarah Mitchell sits on her bed as midnight approaches, the bass quiet outside her window. Tomorrow she'll wake at 8:47, drive to work with exactly $8.47 in her console, tend to wounded soldiers who see her as just another medic. They don't know about Operation Silent Angel, or the weight of the numbers she carries. They don't need to. All that matters is that when they need healing, she'll be there. Quiet, competent, carrying 847 reasons to keep serving. Her fingers complete their nightly count, and she lies back, dog tags resting against her heart. Somewhere in Iowa, Private Coleman takes his first steps on new prosthetics. Somewhere in Afghanistan, a translator's daughter starts medical school. Somewhere in the darkness, 847 hearts beat on, unaware they're part of a prayer whispered in metal and memory. Sarah closes her eyes, ready for another day of being called soft by those who mistake silence for weakness. Knowing that true strength doesn't announce itself, it simply continues, measured in lives saved, one touch at a time.